Hi everyone, I'm your host, Lena Inez, and welcome to the Frame of Mind podcast, a podcast dedicated to those willing to reach their high potential selves, open to wisdom and knowledge, wanting the highest quality of life, and all talk self-improvement, mental health, and mindset growth. In this podcast, I aim to deliver a message that will help you, motivate you, and one day make you successful. With no further means, let's take a look and listen to this week's episode. Thank you for staying in tune and listening to this week's podcast episode. Now, this episode is going to be split into 4 different chapters. The first chapter being the context of healthy habits and routines and how it changed my life. Second chapter about the psychology of routines. The third chapter is going to talk about the difference between habits and routines. And chapter 4 is about how to create healthy habits and routines. Grab your paper, grab a pencil, and take notes because this is healthy habits and routines. The influence that habits have in your life is phenomenal. Now, your identity is made out of your habits and behaviors. Your habits are unconsciously done. Your habits that you do, you're not really aware. And so this is where I recommend journaling in the form of trying to reveal and heal that part or break that habit, being aware of where the root is at. I really want to talk about how it really changed my life, creating habits and routines. Now, I'm just going to say that back then, I didn't have a routine. I didn't have a schedule. I didn't have anything that was structured. And when I started realizing what I have the potential for, I started putting action into creating routines and habits. Now, I had some healthy habits back then, some, not all, but those habits helped me a lot in constructing new ones, and the bad ones that I had, I was able to break them. And I'm gonna go into depth on how to break them and how to create them on the 4th chapter, which you can skip if you want to. But how did these habits and routines change my life from my perspective? Habits changed me a lot, knowing that there were so many that didn't serve me as a purpose. I always thought about, if I continue to do these habits constantly, where would I be at? Always think about that. If you were to do the habits and behaviors constantly throughout several years, where would you be at? Would you be successful? Would you be broke? Would you be someone that you really wanted to be or someone that you didn't want to be? Like, that's where I put myself in. I put myself in that place thinking about, what do my habits and behaviors serve me in the future? If they're not going to serve me in the future, that's where I started analyzing. Should I actually do this or should I not? I was aware. The thing is, a lot of habits you're aware of, but the thing is that it's already engraved and deep rooted into you. And so that's what is so hard to break, because it's already so deep that it's so hard to snap out of it. And so for me, there was a lot of bad habits that I had, like, for an example, cursing. Cursing was such a bad habit for me. I couldn't stop because it was already there. But throughout my time just analyzing and knowing that if I were to continue like this, what would I be like? Then that's when I started realizing I really don't like talking all that nonsense. I really don't like cursing people's life. And so creating a habit, a healthy habit over that matter, it has changed a lot of my life. It has changed a lot how people see me. They respect me more, since I don't just be saying words that are irrelevant. No, because I watch what I say. Your habits are a projection of you. And so if your habits are projecting a negative character that's behind you, what type of respect are you going to gain with negative projection? You're not going to gain the right respect because of the habit that still forms your identity. Your identity is what's projected. And how do you project that? With your behaviors and actions. Changing the habit, changing my routine changed a lot. Last year, I was structured, and I'm going to show y'all what I did to structure my days. I got a planner in which you can literally buy at Walmart for like $3, $10. They're not that expensive. And so I would write down everything that I was going to do the next day and just structure them as routines. Now, habit wise, I would set a goal on what I wanted to change and what I would like to keep. Me just noting that I really want to break a habit was different, and then me trying to create a routine was so different, because with routines it's structured and nothing moves out of place, nothing feels disorganized. Routines sound and look like you're not having freedom. And truly, it frees you from the messy world because of how structured your life is. I started to structure my days last summer, and I had a routine of waking up early and then cleaning and then doing some work and then doing some exercise, and then I would sleep. It was a bunch of different activities in one day, and I was able to get them done because of how structured it was. Routines are like goal setting of a day. Once you start relying and putting yourself in those routines, you start realizing that you can't stop because of the actions that are constantly happening in creating or having those routines set in place. When your routine is set in place, there's no way for it to move. And if it moves, it's because of the habit that's blocking the way to have this successful day. I started having successful days with just implementing small wins. My small wins were journaling, meditating, exercising, and sometimes just watching videos, like good, beneficial videos, like no entertainment, just for me to have the small win of the day. Even if I feel like I didn't meet the expectations of my day, it was still a routine that I followed. The routine that I followed was online, and sometimes whenever you fall off your routine, you start feeling so bad. And I started feeling so bad knowing that I fell off my routine starting school. But what I'm telling you is it changed my life completely, and it can with you too. The good habits that I have formed are now part of my identity, in which I know that there's some habits that I can break, so I can form a new identity as well. You can always create a new version of you, but there's always going to be one salvation for you. I showed you the planner that in which you can literally write your to-do list. You can literally write how your night is going to be like. Just write it down. It's not that hard to write it down. And if you can't write it down, then type it down somewhere. It's well noted if you note it. And so I decided to upgrade into this journal, in which it looks just like a journal, but it's like a habit tracker and skills, and it's just like really cute. Let me show y'all. Just for y'all to look at it. It's really a good essential for you to write things down. Writing things down helps you understand what goal are you going to achieve. Habits are so hard to break and to create just because of the process, but it's so important for you to remember that it's the process over the destination. Whenever you start focusing on the things that matter now, you start realizing that the results are what's worth with the patience. Everybody recommends this book, and I absolutely recommend it for the listeners and for my YouTube watchers that you get this book and you guess it. Atomic Habits by James Clear really talks about how to break habits, how to create habits, and just overall go into depth over behavior change. Now, this book I definitely recommend. I read it in 2 weeks. Do y'all believe me? I absolutely love this book, and I recommend it to all of my listeners that are really wanting to get into depth over self-improvement. I recommend it to anybody that really wants to dig deep into self-improvement. This book is definitely going to help you understand yourself in a way that's like questionable. You start questioning your life and everything, and you start wanting something better for yourself, because knowing that this can give you knowledge, you start realizing that you could apply it. My favorite quote from the book starts like this: "You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall into the level of your systems." Your goals should always have a system. A goal that's written down or a goal that's thought and it's not really well processed is not a goal that will be accomplished, but a goal that will be diminished. Your goal has to have a system for it to be accomplished. When your goal has no system, there's no structure. Your goal has to be reasonable, it has to be smart, it has to be the right timing, in which whenever you create that system on how you're going to achieve that, then you start realizing that it is possible to achieve goals. This is why it's so important to set your systems for your goals. A lot of people that I hear talk about how they have so many goals and everything, but there's no structure, there's no system, there's no game plan for that goal. It's like you just want it so bad and start manifesting it with nothing to show up for. In this world, you don't just manifest things and expect things to come to you. No, you work hard for them. Things don't come to you because you're every character that you have or you're just a good person. No, things come to you when you work hard. And how can you work hard towards that? When you have that desire to work hard for it. So that's when you can say, oh yeah, I manifested it because you worked for it. Nothing in life is free. Create systems for your goals. Let's dive into the psychology of routines. I'm going to read what I have wrote over my notes, okay? And it says here, a lot of people have the wrong concept of routines. They think it diminishes their freedom. They're boring. Supposedly, a lot of people think that routines are boring, in which I'm going to prove my point. The point is not that the routine consists of, but how steady and safe your subconscious mind is, made through repetitive motion and expected outcomes. Whenever you have your routines, you know your subconscious mind is steady. Because when you don't have the routine, you're messy. And so when you have something that's structured upon the routine, you start realizing that it's structured and it leads to freedom. Not because it's boring, but because it's something that you can follow through. A lot of people didn't really believe that I did so many things in a day because of my mindset. I really wanted to do more. So I decided to push more things into a routine. Successful people have routines. You want to be successful? Then have a routine. Your routine cannot consist of you at 9 p.m. scrolling into TikTok, texting your girl, and then leaving it like that. No, your routine has to be something that is specified into your liking. Your liking is within your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is what drives you around. And if you're going to trigger your subconscious mind by feeding it nasty things, for example, at 9 p.m., as I mentioned, scrolling on TikTok, that's not going to benefit your success. You're wanting that gratification that is not going to help you succeed any closer or lead yourself any closer to your goal because there's no system. And because of no system, there's no routine that you follow through. A routine is a system for your habit, for your goal. So you have to have a routine that is structured and specified. This is another book for anyone that's wanting to read another self-improvement book. It's 101 Essays by Brianna Wiest. Now, this book, on the second chapter, it talks about the psychology of routines. That's where I got this concept about it. Because a lot of people don't have structured routines. And the thing is, we want so much, but our routine falls so short to our glory. I recommend reading that book if you want more in-depth concepts. My favorite quote from that book is, your habits create your mood, and your mood is a filter through which you experience your life. And that's so true because most of us let our mood decide for us. Break that. That's a bad habit. Whenever you have your emotions control you, that's not the way to go because you can't let something so small decide for you. And here are the benefits of having the routine if you don't have a routine. There's the flow in your life. You reduce stress, increase productivity, in which it did help me a lot. It increased a lot of my productivity and time management. It helps you a lot with time management. It helped me a lot to manage my time. You must let your conscious mind dictate your day and not your emotions. Chapter 3, the difference between habits and routines. Routines are a series of behaviors that are frequently repeated. Now, habit is the impulse to do a behavior with little to no conscious thought. Meaning that you're not aware of it. Basically roaming through your life with a habit that's not benefiting you at all. It takes 66 days for a habit to stick and around 21 days to form. The matter of your goals are by discipline. You can only structure your system by your discipline. Now, this is the last chapter. I do recommend you to take notes. This is how you can create or break a habit. There is this theory called the habit loop theory. Now, this theory consists with 4 different concepts: a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. Now, we're all going to go into depth over that. The cue is a trigger that triggers the habit. Let's say for this good habit that you really want to focus on your studies, but you don't have that deep work or that mental stability for it. So with that habit, right, you would want to have a cue, in which your cue has to be obvious. Your cue has to be a response to be like, hey, I am going to study. So what can you do for that? You can probably lay out your calculator or your things already on the table for you to study already. Let's say for the bad habit, you really wanted to stop cursing. So what you would do, instead of making the cue obvious, because that's for the positive, for the negative, you would have to make it invisible. What you can do in this scenario is probably blocking songs that have curse words, or hanging around with people that say bad words, or just filtering anything with those type of words so you don't have the tendency to curse. This first part of the habit loop is the tendency. Are you tempted to do the right thing or to do the bad thing? Whatever it is, you can break it. The second part of the habit loop is a craving. Now, the craving is a wanting. You have the cue of trying to study. And so the craving would be that you want to do cute notes, or you probably just want to have like a good grade, like you see that you get hundreds on quizzes and everything. That would be a craving, that you really want and desire something for that good habit. For you to have the craving be positively reinforced, you would have to make it attractive. Make your craving attractive. Now, a lot of people really do like the look of having just pure A's. That's attractive for most people, and that's what motivates them. Craving is like a motivational boost. And for that bad habit of cursing, the opposite of making it attractive is making it unattractive. So what I did for me to stop cursing was fasting. And so when I started fasting and I heard somebody curse, it made me have the ick. It made me have such disgust because it was unattractive. And so that's what made me stop cursing, because it did not look cute. So for you to stop a bad habit, you have to make the craving unattractive. Third of the habit loop is a response. Now the response is an action. What actions are you going to do? So once you have received the craving, which was attractive, how are you going to respond to that? Response. Now this is the most important one in actually creating a habit, because you just can't do like the planning and have no action. So this response part is where you put the action that leads you into reinforcing and having that habit rooted in you. With the good studies, your response would be working for an hour with no distraction. That would be your response. And for the cursing part, your response would be just keeping it shut, being able to just limit yourself in those curse words and just keeping it settled. That would be your response. Last one for the habit loop is reward. Now reward is receiving. Now think about what reward would you win if you actually do it. The reward for having a good steady habit is that you get good grades. For your reward, you have to make it satisfying for the positive habits. But for the negative habits or the bad habits, you have to make it unsatisfying. The rewards for a bad habit, you start feeling that sense of guilt and everything. That's not a good reward for a bad habit. In which, for you to have a good reward on the habit that you want to break, it has to be unsatisfying. Your reward for your bad habit has to be unsatisfying. A lot of people that eat a lot and feel guilty right after, which is, overeating, binge eating, the reward of them to keep binge eating is guilt, it's disgust, it's phenomenal. So when you start thinking about where your habits are placed, start thinking about it. Is my habit a good habit or a bad habit? If you're trying to create a new habit, it has to be obvious, it has to be attractive, it has to be easy, and it has to be satisfying. For you to break a habit, it has to be invisible, it has to be unattractive, it has to be hard, and it has to be unsatisfying. I forgot to mention the easy and hard part, by the way. But for you to break or create, you have to keep this in mind. What habits are triggering this circle? And whatever it is, try to take account and try to take it slowly, because a slow process wins many goals. So what you would do is repeat and set goals with system, as I mentioned in the beginning, building goals with reasonable time and approach, and then just systems overall. I wrote this down for the last thing, and it's about keystone habits, and I'll read it to y'all, okay? These are habits that can trigger a positive domino effect in other areas of your life. Regular exercise, for an example, can lead to a better eating habits, improve sleep, and reduce stress. Meaning that whatever habit you have can do so much work. As this example mentioned, overeating. If you eat healthy, it's not just because you want to have a dream body, but because there's so many positive effects over it when you created that habit. Anyways, guys, Thank you for listening to this week's podcast episode. Today's episode was really more educational, me getting my point across, getting you and motivating you to create a system and routine. It is not the time for you to get in a slump, but it's time for you to get out of that slump and create a routine that you can follow to change your life. Your routines make up your character. So you gotta have a routine that resembles and projects you. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe. And if you're listening on podcast or Apple Podcast, I recommend you to give it a rate. It will help me a lot in growing and scaling my podcast episodes. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening this week's episode. Bye, guys.